Hello, Literary Yard readers. This is the first Literary Yard interview, and my maiden guest is Bruce Levine. Thank you, Bruce, for accepting the invitation and taking the risk of being my first guest. And I try to keep this conversation around writing, your experience as an author so far, and what's been your experiences, and where all you have, drawn your inspiration from. So to start the conversation, I think it would be great if you can introduce yourself and say a few words in the beginning.
Okay, well, to begin with, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be your maiden guest, as you put it. And I've been honored to be included with so many times on Literary Yard. You've been very generous in publishing my pieces, so I thank you. And I hope the readers, your readers, are enjoying the things you've been publishing of mine.
Very much.
Let's see. To give you a thumbnail sketch of my writing career, I started and still am a classical composer and a show composer. As a composer, it's taken me a rather circuitous route as well. And I started writing some poetry when I was still a teenager. Actually, one of the early pieces was performed at a poetry production at Lincoln Center in Manhattan. I'm born in Manhattan and lived most of my life there. Only recently moved to Maine, and I thought I'd never say it was time to leave New York, but it's became time to leave and moved here. Good move also, Maine's a great place to live. But then I wrote early on and then never wrote again until suddenly I started writing fiction and wrote several novels and lots of short stories in the mid-1990s. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly stopped again until 2016 and started writing again. And I've been writing ever since, a lot.
I've seen a lot of stories that you have written. And the common theme, which I could, find out in those stories, is around love, bonding, and self-introspection. So, any particular reasons that you keep your themes around these, human angles?
Probably because I'm in love, and I've been lucky in my life in one sense, and unlucky. I was married to a wonderful woman for 37 years, mm-hmm. and she died almost 5 years ago. And then
so sorry.
Thank you. Through a poetry blog, I met a really fabulous lady, and we've now been together. October 23rd was 4 years. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I think I write love pieces because they're to the people, the two women in my life that I have really loved. And they just kind of fall out of my fingers. They're because that's who I am and who they are. I've just recently, I'm very proud to say, had a collection of 30 love poems for Jane, that's the lady I'm with, and that's called Sweet Dreams, and that was just recently published as a book, so I'm rather proud of that.
What's the title of the book?
It's called Sweet Dreams, okay. Which is the title of a poem. She was away actually visiting her son. Mm-hmm. And these are poems I wrote during the couple of months she was actually gone. And these, I collected them together. One of the titles of the poems was Sweet Dreams, because I wished her sweet dreams. And it just seemed like an appropriate title for the book. And I'm rather proud of it. As far as introspection, I don't know if I'm that introspective in the sense of truly just looking at myself internally. I tend to, how should I put this? focus more on just being and living and moving forward. I'm a real person who likes to move forward. Maybe
I
that's
think that's
because I've
that's a great message, I believe, because I've seen people being stuck at one place, even poets who keep on writing the sad stuff, and they sort of oscillate between those negative thoughts. Whereas the theme that emerges out of your poetry, which comes straight from your life experiences, I think that's a great way of progressing in life, and adapting to the situations positively.
yes, I think that's important. I don't like to get stuck. I believe in living for today and planning for the future. Just as a kind of I guess a life
Philosophy of life, a way of life.
philosophy. Yeah, the moving forward though, maybe that comes from partially from my show business background. I've been in show business all my life. And you go from project to project in show business. When a project is over, you can't dwell on the fact that, oh well, the show ended or this project ended. You have to look toward the next one, and you're usually looking toward the next one while you're doing the current project. So maybe that's where it got instilled. But I really do think that if you get stuck and you just live in the past, then you get old and you're stuck and living in the past.
Right. And I really find it interesting that you've been a composer and in this show business. Could you please tell a bit more about this? And I think that's been your full-time career.
Yeah, well, it has been. I've also been in academia, but my career has been in show business. Well, and I would say, well, I started on the road when I was 15, and started working professionally as a musician.
Okay.
And I was always already doing music and theater science, almost like Siamese twins, even when I was in public school and high school. Okay. And I went from starting to work just gigs, so to speak, when I was 15, and then was lucky enough, I auditioned. I was at the time an oboist who specialized on English horn, and I auditioned and spent the summer at the summer home of the Boston Symphony and got to work with great musicians and study and play with. And then I graduated from high school and went into my first Broadway show. And then a couple years later, did my first Broadway musical direction. So it's been a process, but I think that's what everything is.
I think that's a wonderful combination of music and poetry put together. And I think music always adds a great value to poetry. And without the one, I think it's all cacophony and not that great outcome that always readers expect.
I think you used a great word, cacophony. Yeah, you don't want to have cacophony in your life. And I think that's part of why I do what I do, is because I just keep going. I will say that, to use today's phrase, a multitasker. I'm always working on multiple projects. Right now I'm orchestrating and preparing a new piece that I recently finished, a concerto for winds and brass. And yet at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, what's my next poem going to be? And I tend to write a lot of seasonal poems as well. Maybe I'm just an observer in a way of things. So I write seasonal poems. And I actually consider one of my genre that I write poetry in observational. And you may have noticed that with some of my stories, they tend to be a little bit observational. I like to see what's going on. I like to photograph the seasons. I have a set of over 400 pictures that I had taken pretty much from the same location throughout an entire year of this beautiful lake on Long Island, New York. I like that whole process. I'm a process person. I think that sums me up as who I am.
Interesting.
In every sense, I like the process of the blank page to the finished piece. I like the process of rehearsing a show up to the performance. I love
That
the
truly
process.
reflects in your writing. I've seen in most of the stories. Your stories end really well. They don't hang up in one place or hang up on a situation. They end up with a message, and they end up really well. So I think,
Oh, well, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. I hope that your readers feel the same way.
Yes, sometimes we get a response from readers and they are pretty positive. Sometimes, readers read and they don't respond, but still keep coming. So, we take that kind of, response in a positive way rather than, considering it neutral.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So my
Like I
question,
said,
Bruce, I think I'll move to more current questions. Like, you know, times have changed. Poetry, what used to be in the past, it still is the same, but things or the media has changed. Digitalization has come in place. So how do you see a poet's role in this digital age? Because most poets are not that good marketer. So if you see, we publish a lot of poems even on Literary Yard, and I keep hearing from authors that they have launched this book, that book, or written a collection of poems here on this topic or on that subject. But in most times I've seen that even though they have written great stuff, but it doesn't reach to the right audience. It doesn't end up in the hands of people who really love poetry. So in this digital age, what where do you see the gaps that authors can probably mitigate and overcome those challenges to reach out to the audience?
wow. I think you've asked the ultimate age-old questions, whether it be poetry, classical music, or any of the fine arts. I don't want to disparage another form or genre, but the more esoteric pieces have, and whether it be we go Beethoven or the great poets. You read Emily Dickinson, you read and the St. Vincent Millay, who happens to be one of my favorite poets.
Right.
I think it's always been a problem for the serious writers and authors and composers and painters. Why have so many people not been recognized or taken, till after they were already dead before them? The digital age, I think, because of people like you, and thank you, God bless you, having online journals, I think, does open a venue that obviously was not there before. I think online venues are truly very important, in the sense that they are out there. And while I'm not a great social media participant, I do use my Facebook page. To list and promote everything. I put and announce it. There are a number of groups that I'm on. So I get to the other people who are truly interested by they're members of these groups. I look for public groups. I never look at private groups. You're only preaching to the choir. So I like public groups where everybody can see everything. So yeah, I do put it out. I also use an emailing list. I have a mailing list that I announce my my new publications. I'm honored to include the things you've published on literary art. I send out an emailing every month to a list of people with links to the piece, so they can go and they can read what's out there. I've distilled it down to a number of online journals that I really honor and respect. I'm honored by and respect that because the journals publish consistently what I think are not only great pieces, but also pieces that I would want to read and I want to share my pieces with. Literary art is obviously one of them. I send you something every month. I've kind of gotten it because I don't want to overwhelm you. Or
yeah, I've seen quite a few achievements that you have already bagged, like you've been a Pushcart Poetry Award nominee and Spillwords, award winner, and also been featured in, I'm forgetting the name of that publication.
WestWard Quarterly.
Yeah, WestWard Quarterly.
It's a small print journal.
But recognition matters in all these journals, because if somebody appreciates your work and rates it on something, because there must have been other people who've been in the short list and find you get the award. So that kind of recognition is something that comes positively for poets and authors.
It comes rarely, and I've been thrilled and honored to have been awarded these, specifically the ones you've mentioned. But I think that goes along with who you submit to and who you want to be published by. If you have a journal like Literary Art, where it's going to attract readers that want to read the kind of things I write, and the kind of people who like to read, period. There are people who these days that they don't want to read anything. They just want to play video games. All right, well, they're entitled to that, but thank
there's
God
audience of all kind.
Yeah, exactly. But thank God for people like myself and your other authors, that there is Literary Art and a few and some others. I'm not going to detract from. There are a lot of online journals now.
Obviously, a lot of them, and I even myself took the inspiration from these journals. And one of the trigger for me when I started Literary Art, in 2013, was I was trying to submit my poetry to some of the traditional journals which were print oriented, and the delays in getting publications and the long pipeline with them, that sort of triggered me to start this. And I thought it would be a great thing if I could start something like this. I was pretty skeptic when I started this, but somehow when I got the response from contributors like you, I got thrilled, and I thought that there is certainly a need of such a platform to carry forward. And despite many challenges which I faced along the way, I kept on, publishing on this journal from time to time, and started upgrading it as and when possible, even though I have a day job in the IT industry. Despite that, I'm trying my best to, keep it alive.
Well, you do an amazing job. You put something out, pieces out every day. It's aside from when my piece comes out, I do read your journal. You mentioned the timeline. You should have been there when I was submitting out back, and I'm talking many years ago. Everything was snail mail, and multiple submissions were not acceptable. If you got caught having submitted to 2 publishers, and one saw that you did for whatever reason, they kind of cut you off. It was very different, and you could wait months and even a year, and then you write, did you receive it? And because you don't even know whether they received it. So things have really improved in the submission sense.
That was a
Plus,
different world, and I think this democratization through this technology, and that has helped authors a lot. At least given a place to sort of display, manifest their work. Whether it's liked or not liked, that's a different matter. But at least they have a platform where they can publish. They can start their own websites and all.
absolutely. Yeah, you again, you use great words, a platform to get published. Um, there are still so few
Mhm.
print publishers of classical music, for example.
Okay.
I know I send my pieces out, and I get a lot of rejections because they only have so many pieces they can fit in their production schedule for the year. And a lot of times you don't know what they're looking for, so you submit a piece. And I think this was also in the literary world. You don't know what a publisher is looking for, which is
True.
why it's the online journals have filled in a whole other space of publication,
Mhm.
because you can get instant understanding.
That's
And I'm not saying instant gratification, I'm saying instant understanding of the journal. You can see what the editors like, what they want to publish on their journal. I'll give you a very specific.
Mhm.
I had submitted a couple of times to an online journal
Mhm.
and gotten rejected each time.
Okay.
And there was a very, no, I know, there was, this is a good story in the end. The editor said, I now see you've submitted several pieces, and I now see what the kind of pieces you write, and I don't think it's going to work in our journal. So you're welcome to continue submitting, but you're probably not going to get published with us.
Okay.
And I wrote back saying, thank you for being honest.
Mhm.
I think that's a really important thing that editors have when they're honest with their authors and say, okay, you write whatever you write, but it's not what we want to publish.
Mhm.
And I didn't end up submitting. I wrote back saying, thank you very much for your honesty and your advice and your help. I won't be submitting in the future, but I appreciate the fact that you did tell me.
Mhm.
Why waste anybody's time? Theirs or
Yeah,
mine.
that's true.
So yeah, I appreciated that a lot. This has been a much more accessible
Mhm.
situation with the online
And I think
journals.
that's a good way of telling. At least a person cannot he shouldn't be keep trying all the time. They might not like the work that you have written. There may be a number of reasons. The one could be they are not focusing on a particular subject that you're writing on, so they might be focusing on something else. Like it happens in the movies world. If you're writing, if you want to produce a movie or an episode, say for say on love matters or relationships, so you would obviously look for stories which are around that subject rather than which are written on random subjects. That might be the reason.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't, it's not a critique of the work. It's a matter of a proper fit. When things come together, because the journal right, it publishes what you're submitting, and obviously we're assuming that everybody submits good pieces, but it just has to be the right fit.
Right.
Uh, and I've actually only submit certain types of pieces to certain types of journals.
Mhm.
I've kind of almost like in theater, we cast shows. I've kind of cast my submission because I know, all right, well, this journal tends to publish more of this kind of piece. So I'm not going to send, I'll give you, you mentioned I write a lot of love poems and a lot of love pieces. It's a journal that doesn't publish that. why would I bother sending a love poem to them?
True.
On the other hand, WestWard Quarterly, for example, is a very and they state it right on the cover, is a family kind of journal. And yes, my stuff tends to be G-rated, if you want to use that. But I do write some more esoteric kind of things, so I don't send those pieces to them because they're not going to publish it. It's not of their genre.
Obviously.
Maybe
It's a commercial world. Plus, you know your readers, what they like. So even authors and poets, they need to keep in mind the readership, who they are writing for, and they need to keep in focus what kind of publication they are sending their poems. And even if while they are, composing poems for a collection of poetry, they need to sort of bring one message across all these points that could, bind them together and make them a piece of, marketing at a later stage when the book is published, so that they can, craft a messaging on social media platforms or other media which they use or which they hire, so that they can attract readers for themselves.
Exactly. Again, it is marketing as well. When you think back to the good old days, in a sense, of print journals, and you had the Saturday Evening Post and Life and Look magazine, and Cosmopolitan was really more of a journal than it was just a focus. And there's a perfect example of marketing and focusing. Cosmopolitan changed from a literary journal magazine, largely literary, and you had people like Ernest Hemingway writing for Cosmopolitan. So it's a matter of marketing. They've chosen the direction that they want to go in. I think the online journals have chosen. New York Literary Yard obviously has a focus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we keep, our readers in mind. We build an audience and try to keep our content in that side.
Right. Which is why I send you the kind of pieces I do. I send you primarily short fiction, because it seems to go. Maybe I should send you more poetry. Would you like some more poetry?
Obviously, anytime. So if you have seen, I publish a lot of poetry as well.
Yes, I know. I read the poetry. I just wondered. I don't know why I tend to send you the short fiction pieces. As I mentioned, I try to keep it to once a month, because I don't want to overwhelm you, because I'm sure you get
which makes sense. Which makes
a lot of submissions, and also everybody needs to get their turn. You can only put out so much every day.
Bruce, let me end this video recording formally, and we'll keep our conversation. Thank you so much for being the maiden guest. And it's been really pleasure talking to you, especially interesting enough to know how you've been sailed through this and the kind of works you write, where all you draw your inspiration, and how you strike a balance in your thoughts, keeping in mind the audience and particularly the publication's particular slant, which is a great message for our readers as well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I'm just ending this video recording.
Okay, well, I wanted to thank you, and thank you for honoring me with being your maiden guest. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.